My name is Dane Monson. I am 61 years old. I've been sober for 32 years, March 19th, 1989. Considered my addiction level of what I was going through unfathomable. You get to the point where not wanting to drink and not being able to stop becomes such an issue. You just think about suicide of some type. And I remember calling what was then my girlfriend, now my wife, saying, I can't do this anymore. I think I'm gonna eat a bullet today. And her freaking out because I was still on a run. I was still buzzed. I wasn't thinking clearly. And now that I'm sober, I think of the horror that I caused that poor girl, and being that selfish to do that. And you know, she came home from work and took my guns, and I was just mortified at the selfishness that alcohol and drugs had brought me to. I wasn't raised that way. Yeah, so I was under the assumption at the end, well, not totally at the end, but towards the end, when you're bouncing in and out of different situations, and I was in an abuse program and a therapy program, and you know, all the different things that we try as alcoholics and addicts that other people set up for us because we were too damn lazy to do it ourselves, and not desperate enough, in my opinion, now that I look back on it, that I was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and that I wasn't hurting anyone but me. And I didn't see the devastating effects that rippled through every aspect of my life, my family, my work, friends, anything. It affected each and everything associated in my life in one way or another. And I didn't see it. No, I had been in and out of the rooms, and I absolutely hated the A&A slogan and program. And I didn't see how standing in a circle, saying the Lord's Prayer and telling some other asshole all my deep, dark secrets was going to keep me sober. I thought that, for one, I was going directly to hell. I thought if I told somebody everything I did, they would just use it against me. Because that's all I could think of was myself. I couldn't see the effect that I was having on everyone else. So all of my thought processes and my actions were about me. I didn't see the me, I in the addiction itself. It wasn't until I started to get sober through the guidance of a sponsor and the 12 steps that I started to realize the damage that I had inflicted on others, and was completely mortified and ashamed.
Changed.
So, you know, the change for me came, it was a slow process. My parents were divorced when I was young. My mom lived in Scottsdale, and my dad lived in Orange County, California, in Yorba Linda. So we would go to school in Scottsdale, and then we would go for summer vacation and Christmas and whatnot to stay with my dad in California. And I had a stepbrother and sister in California, and I had two real sisters that lived with us here in Phoenix. And as drinking progresses, back then the drinking age was 19. It wasn't 21, it was 19. When we were in 8th grade, my friend Jeff could grow a beard, and we'd pedal our little Schwinns down to the U-Totem, what are now Circle K's, on the corner, and we'd buy beer. And you know, we started drinking in the 8th grade because it was cool. We would go to Bob Riggins' house, and his mom would she'd buy beer for us. She would, I mean, we did everything but rape that poor woman, and she liked it. You know, it was just one of those single moms trying to do the best she could, and Bob would steal money out of her purse, and we'd go buy weed and alcohol and all that stuff. And you know, you start selling drugs. I started, there was much better weed in California than there was in Arizona, so I started transporting weed from California to Arizona because it was better quality. You know, when I started smoking pot, it was that leafy stuff with stems and seeds. And in California, it was all bud, the Colombian. You know, we bought 5-finger bags here that was all crap, but nevertheless, it got us high. And so that involvement in progressing in the drugs and in the alcohol in California, you start experimenting with all the drugs that became available, the acid, the white crosses, the mushrooms, the cocaine. The first time I did cocaine, I was in love. I did my first line of cocaine with my older sister and her boyfriend, and I'll never forget my sister saying, "No, Michael, don't let him do any of that." And I'm like, "Why? Come on, man. Ain't gonna hurt me." And I remember being up all fucking night, not being able to sleep, and just thinking it was the best thing ever. And I think I was a sophomore in high school at that time. And so coming to the point where your life starts to get going and you start to spin out of control after job, after, my deal was I would run back and forth. When it got too bad in California, I'd come back to Arizona. When it got too bad in Arizona, I'd go back to California. What I didn't see was it all started with alcohol. All of my craziness and the stuff that I did always started with alcohol and ended with drugs and me lying, cheating, and stealing. You know, I didn't see an end. I didn't know if I could ever stop, honestly. I didn't. And my dad in California had neighbors, and the neighbor, they had adopted a daughter when she was young, and she was one of these children. She was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman. She was just beautiful, and she had 3 kids, and I watched them all grow up. And I had moved back home for the umpteenth time after being thrown out of somebody's house, and Kim, the oldest daughter, called me in April to wish me happy birthday. And that was 6 months before that, I had gone to Charlie Street for the very first time and tried to get sober, and had gotten, 5-6 months of sobriety or something like that, and of course ended up throwing it away because I hated A&A. But I went to the meetings, I did the antabuse, I did all the bullshit that we do to try and not drink. What I didn't understand was how the disease affected me physically and mentally. I think what we don't get is it's physical in the beginning, but it's more powerfully mental in the aspects of the illness. And I didn't see that. I didn't comprehend that at all. And so I thought I would never stop, honestly. I didn't think that I would ever be able to give up drugs and alcohol. Going fishing and not smoking dope just seemed like a waste of time. Going to a wedding and not drinking champagne forever was incomprehensible. I just didn't think that would be a life worth living. I didn't see any benefit in that because, as you grow up, it's the celebrations of weddings and deaths and birthdays and family reunions. And in my family, it was all centered around drinking. All of it. It's just that was the times. And so living the rest of my life without drinking just seemed like something I would never be able to achieve. When I realized I couldn't get sober for her, when I realized that I wasn't going to be able, you see, I kept trying to get sober because of the things that I would do running amok, because I was raised good. I mean, my parents, other than being alcoholic, did the best they could. I can't blame, I was beat a little bit as a kid, but who wasn't? That That was just the generation. You know, it was a physical, it was just physical. That's just the way it was. I was never beaten black and blue or till I was unconscious, but boy, the mom and dad would both take the belt to me, I can tell you that. And but I just didn't understand. I just didn't understand that I couldn't not drink, but I couldn't stop. You know, that you want to stop, you want to quit, you want to get a life, but left to my own devices, I couldn't do it. And when I finally figured out that there had to be a different way, and because I kept trying to get sober, you know, in the beginning it was for Dad, and then it was for Mom. I remember my stepdad taught me how to paint, and we used to go to the bar every afternoon, and I remember one day he just stopped cold turkey taking me to the bar, and I'm like, what's up? Well, Mom thinks we drink too much. And I'm like, well, we do, that's what makes it fun. And he said, let's see who can quit the longest. I'll bet you $100 that the first person that drinks owes the other guy $100. And I thought, oh, this is cake. He can't go 2 minutes without drinking, because we went to the bar every day after work. And I'll be son of a bitch if he didn't quit drinking. And it wasn't a week and I was sneaking drinking. And when I finally fessed up and paid him, I mean, $100 back then, that was a half a week's pay. And I remember him making me pay him, and that hurt. You know, I was pissed. But, you know, I just, so I couldn't quit, and I couldn't stay sober, and the only thing that I could figure was I had to do something different, and instead of trying to get sober for other people and for Kim, I had to get sober for me. I had to do something for me. The thing about drug addiction and alcoholism that I understand today is that it takes full control over every aspect of our life. It doesn't leave anything untouched. And in order for somebody to fully recover, they have to concede to their innermost self that they have this issue and this problem, and then be willing to do whatever it takes to correct it within. So I had gone to Charlie Street.
What is Charlie Street?
Charlie Street is a recovery house that was started by a drunk in the early, I think like 70s, I want to say, and it's on Charlie Street. It's the First Step House, and it's in Costa Mesa, California. And I was dropped off there in April of '88. And Charlie Street's rules were you could only go through there once a year and 3 times in a lifetime. That was it. But it was free. And they gave you 10 days to get your shit together and your life together, and they had apartments next to it. And if you qualified, you could rent one of the apartments. If you acquire employment and whatnot, you could get one of those apartments. Or they would help you find sober living. And I had gone through there in '88, and I had gotten a sponsor, Dave Signs, and Dave lived in Newport Beach, and he started sponsoring me. And come to find out, Dave Signs sold speakers out of his van and was basically a hustler and a crook. And I was about 3 months sober. We went through the steps really quick. It was bullshit. And I relapsed, I think, 3 months. And at this time, I had moved into an apartment with Kim because I had a really good job. I was working for a contractor in Santa Ana. We did all insurance work, all insurance repair. I had a pretty good job, and I rented an apartment, and Kim moved in with me. And so she wanted to go to nursing school, and I told her I'd pay for it. She said, well, I can get grants and whatnot. So we she filled out all the paperwork and she got approved and everything. And the day before she was to go to school, they called her and they said, one of your grants fell through because your mother uses you as a tax credit. And the government won't pay for this portion of your schooling. You have to do it. And as I recall, I think it was about $5,000. I can't remember the exact number. And I remember how devastated she was. And Kim is the only person that ever saw anything good in Dane Monson. Everybody else said, get the fuck away from that guy. He's a piece of shit. And she is absolutely, I think, one of the only people on earth at that time that saw anything good in me. So I said, I went to my folks and I said, can we move in? First we went to the school and I told the school, I said, look, I'll pay the $5,000. You let her go to school. And they said, well, that's not the way it works. If she graduates, we can't give her a certificate. And I said, if I don't have this bill paid in full by the time she graduates, don't give her a certificate. And they both looked at me with that stupid look on their face like, what are you talking about? I said, look, I'll pay it. Just give me the opportunity to do it. And if I don't have it fully paid for, you don't have to give her a certificate. And the woman was taken back and said, that sounds fair. So I went to my parents and I said, hey, can I rent a room from you? Because Kim wants to go to nursing school. And so they rented us a room and we moved in with my mom and dad. And I basically taken that poor girl hostage because I couldn't stay sober. She's going to school and trying to become a nurse, and I'd disappear for 3 days because I couldn't stay sober. I'd start doing cocaine and I'd be off and gone and stuck. You just go, you get in one of those trap houses and you get stuck. And I came home after a run in March 1989, and I could tell by the look in her face she was done. She had enough of Dane Monson's bullshit, and she was done. She was having no more of it. And I said, would you do me a favor and give me a ride to Charlie Street? And she said, I don't think it's been a year, but yeah, I'll take you there. And I'm like, just take me there. So she took me down to Charlie Street and we walked in. I said, you got a bed? And Mike Burns was there. He was part of the committee at that point. And I said, you got a bed? And he said, no, we don't have any beds, and you're not done anyway. You still have a watch and a girlfriend. And I said, fuck you. You don't even know me, dude. Yeah, fuck you. And I turned and I looked at Kim and I said, you can go. She said, they don't have any beds. And in all honesty, I wanted you to say, gosh darn, too bad, let's go. Maybe another day, maybe another place, maybe another time. But I was God-struck at that moment in time. And I knew if I left that place, I would drink and use again. I knew it in all my heart. I knew if I left, I was fucked. And more so, that poor girl was going to be put through the mill yet again. And I said, leave me here, man. If I have to sleep on the front step, that's what I'll do. I am not going anywhere. That motherfucker don't know me. Leave my ass here. I'll be fine. And reluctantly, she left me there. And a guy didn't come home from the meeting that night, and I ended up getting his bed. And that was March 19th, 1989. That was a Sunday. Tuesday, I went to the Stag on Heliotrope and met John Butler and Jake Jacobson. John and I hit it off really quick because he was from Phoenix as well. And I still have my family still lived out here on my mom's side. And Jake, I asked to be my sponsor because I heard in a meeting that they said, in a sponsor, you want to get somebody that has something you want. So Jake traveled for a living, which I liked. He drove a really nice car, which I liked. And he always carried a gun, which I admired. And I wanted all three of those things, so I thought he would be a perfect sponsor. So I asked him to sponsor me, not knowing that he was going to actually ask me to do 12-step work. But that's how it started. That's how the Charlie Street and the heliotrope men's stag came into my life.
And you've been sober ever since?
I've been sober ever since.
How important is human connection to recovery?
Oh gosh, you can't put a scale on that. It's invaluable. Without human connection, we don't get sober. Human connection is all of our feelings. You know, that's one reason I couldn't stay sober, is my feelings aren't always right. You know, if I see a guy stealing a jack out of my truck, I'm going to chase him down, man. He's wrong. That's my truck. That's my jack. He's wrong. But what if he pulls out a gun and he shoots you? Because I'm right, because he's a thief and he's stealing from me? Does that make the situation any better? And it's all transpired because of the way I feel. He's taking something that's mine. He's a thief. That's wrong. So I'm right. Because if you're right and you have that justified resentment and you're just convinced you're right, you can't see past it. So I would chase him down to try and get my jack back. And at the end of the day, the jack doesn't make a bit of difference. It wouldn't change my life one iota. But my mind and my feelings tell me, oh, you can't let him get away with that. You can't let people tread on your life like that. That's unacceptable. And so that human connection drives us in different directions without us even realizing it. You know, it's just like right now with our Republicans and our Democrats and our COVID and no COVID. And are you going to get a COVID shot? Well, yeah, I got one. Are you going to get one? Oh, no, I'm not going to get one. Oh, God, you're not going to get a COVID shot? And those are all feelings. Just because I don't agree with somebody doesn't make them wrong. They have their own reasons why they do what they do, but just because I don't agree with it doesn't make it wrong. And it's that human interaction that is also a blessing but yet a curse, because we get to watch it divide a nation through this pandemic and through you know, our Democratic and Republican system. It's just, it destroys so many people. And the thing that people don't realize is drug addiction and alcoholism has got them all beat. And it just amazes me that people, that they don't post our numbers, they don't post our statistics, you know, because mental illness and drug addiction and alcoholism and all these different things go hand in hand, and they really don't know what to do with it. And you know, if it wasn't for the independent people, Estel, I don't believe we'd even have a handle on it. You know, if the A&A, as they say, didn't start, I don't know where would you be where I would be as a human being without that social interaction, that unconditional love given to me by one Jake Jacobson, who shared his experience, strength, and hope with me long enough so I could love myself and pray to a God that I didn't understand and a power that was greater than myself. You see, because I couldn't love Kim until I learned how to love me. And I didn't get that. It's like I couldn't get sober for her. I got to get sober for me. And that social interaction is also powerful, but can be so misleading. And I think that's why this is such a deadly disease. Because many people, you know, there's a big wide gap between my experience and my opinion. My opinion is over here and it's my opinion, but my experience is what's happened. And you can't take that away from me, right, wrong, or indifferent. It's my experience. Now, it may be different than yours, which is fine, but it doesn't make it any less valuable to me. And if I can share that experience in any way, shape, or form and help another man conquer this seemingly baffling, powerful disease, you know, God told me a long time ago, I can't keep it if I won't give it away. And that's that human interaction that one has to maintain in order to be able to be sober and my God pays tenfold without a doubt. I got a life better than I ever thought I could have. I got for a guy that was positive he was going to hell, I believe my God is forgiving, and I believe my God wants me to make the mistakes, realize them, and then become a better person for it. And that's what I believe the biggest gift of this program has given me, as a way to try and become a better person and give it away.
You help lots and lots of people.
Well, we try.
It's been a long time. You've been sober for a long time, a lifetime of sobriety. Not just physical absence, but of recovery, a whole new life. What's life like now?
Well, I've finally been sober longer than I was running amok. That's good. Brian Riggins and I smoked the first joint in the playground in the big concrete tube. I was in the 7th grade. I was 12 or 13. But I was in the 7th grade. And after that day, everything was about drugs and alcohol. And today, since I have been blessed enough to be sober one day at a time for 32 years, life has its challenges. We have lots of ups and downs in life. But, they say don't make any big decisions in your first year. And Kim got pregnant within the first week I went to Charlie Street. We had to get engaged to be married because her grandma insisted. I had to pay for the baby, doctor, and the hospital all in cash because we didn't have any insurance. I had a Ford LTD that my granny gave me, and I had 3 sacks of shit in the back when I got sober. And I got sober in March, married in June. I saved enough money so we could go on a honeymoon up the coast. We drove up the coast for a week to her aunt's house and somewhere in San Francisco, and then over to Yosemite and down. And the life that God has allowed me to lead since I've been sober is indescribable. It is absolutely indescribable. I'm the father of 3 children. I have a daughter, 32 years old, that lives in Denver, who's an art teacher. I have a middle son, Dylan, who is, I don't know if it makes any sense for the story, but my son is transgender. That came with a lot of challenges. One of the worst days of my life was being in the hospital. When one of his friends told on him at school, and he had taken a razor blade, cut from here to the top of his shoulder. And watching a child of yours hurt theirself is, gosh, you talk about an indescribable feeling. That is one that I don't wish on anybody. But that was a bad day. And then I got a younger son, Corey, 16, and he's had his challenges through COVID, trying to maintain school and whatnot. But in all of that, the cohesiveness of our family, I wouldn't trade it for the world. God has blessed me with more material possessions than a guy like me could ever deserve. I don't want to brag by any stretch of the imagination, but we've got a great, big, beautiful 3,800 square foot, 2-story house. I don't even know how many vehicles I own because I collect vehicles because I'm into auto collision. So I've got, 5 or 6 of them in the Hayward House backyard. John Butler and I opened up Hayward House in 1996. And it was a house that was supposed to be mirrored after Charlie Street, where I got sober. I had had back surgery in California, and Kim and I decided we were going to move our family. We had had our first child, and we decided we'd move to Arizona because we weren't going to be able to afford a house in Southern California. We got tired of sitting on the freeway for 2 to 3 hours a day. In all fairness, so we chose to come to Phoenix. My mom lived here, and John Butler had lived here. He came from California back over here. And so we bought a house, and then I was painting this house, and my wife was bringing me dinner, and she said, "Hey, this would make a great house." And I'm thinking, I don't even have a job. Just had back surgery. I haven't even qualified for disability. I've got 0 income. You know, I'm like, well, how am I supposed to buy a house? I mean, that would be awesome if I could, but we just bought our house and I don't have any money. She said, well, why don't you just ask and apply for it and let him tell you no. And I'll be damned if in 3 months we didn't own another house. And I didn't even have a job. And that's, you see God work in your life in all these different ways and fashions, which is a whole nother story. But so John Butler and I started the Hayward House in '96, and I've been involved in trying to give it away so God would allow me to keep it in a full capacity manner. Since then, life goes up and down, but I can tell you I am the luckiest guy in the world. God has blessed me with a woman that there's nothing I wouldn't do for her. There's nothing I wouldn't give her. I'd give it all up for her in this second. I have been blessed beyond my wildest dreams with my wife and my children and the interactions that I have with others. And, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what were you able to leave behind? Because my stepdad always told me, when you borrow something, always leave it better than you found it. And I equate sobriety to that and life. If God's going to allow me to stay sober, it's my duty to leave it better than I found it. And I remember going the first 3 years and not being able to sponsor anyone. And I'd call Jake, and Jake would say, you got to sponsor guys, dude. You got to sponsor guys. I'm like, Jake, nobody wants me to sponsor him. I'm an asshole. And he's like, that's not true. You got a minute more sobriety than anyone else, you can sponsor them. So I remember he started making me introduce myself to 3 people, and at a meeting, you got to introduce yourself to 3 people, give them your phone number, and ask them if they need any help. And I did that, and it was about 2 months, and I got the first sponsee. Of course, none of them stayed sober. And I'd call him and say, see, I told you it wouldn't work. And he'd say, but yes, it did, because you stayed sober. And because that's the kind of things I thought and did in early sobriety because of my feelings like we talked about earlier. I didn't understand that all these character defects that hampered me in recovery could get better. You see, because it was easy when you're drinking, you get to drown them. And then they become tolerable. Because you're not raised that way, but they become tolerable. And when you get sober, the character defects are still there, and then they're intolerable. I'm not supposed to lie. I'm not supposed to steal. And I was running amok, I'd steal your wallet and help you look for it and convince you I don't have it. I don't know what happened to it. That other guy that left a half hour ago, he took it. And I'd convince you of that. And we get good at that scandalous crap when we're running amok. But when we're sober, we have to put that energy into helping. And, there's a fine line between helping others and enabling others. And it took me a long time to figure out what the difference was. And it's only through experience that you acquire the skills that God gives us. And I know you understand what I'm talking about from the many, many people you've helped yourself. But there's no, in watching a lot of people lose their life to this disease, far more than I could ever imagine. I'd be honest. I would have never thought I'd know as many people that have passed away from these diseases than I do. But on the other hand, the amount of guys that thought they would never see their wife again, they'd never see their kids again, they would never catch up on the IRS, they would never own a home, they would never get their driver's license back, do the work, get it all back, and then some. Those experiences are priceless. Absolutely priceless. And, you know, my wife is big into the church. And I've never been. I totally believe in God and Jesus Christ, and you know, I'm in, but I'm not a guy that's going to go to church every Sunday. My wife gets involved in the church like I get involved in AA. She does her thing over there, and I do mine at the houses. And when she said she was being baptized, I said, I want to be baptized. She said, why? I said, because I want to go where you go. In the next life, I want to go where you go. And that involved taking classes and this and that. But, you know, the only thing I had to do is say I believe in Jesus Christ, which I do. And that's why they have public baptism, because it's not what you say, it's what you do. You're showing people that you believe in Jesus Christ by being baptized. So we got baptized together. That was a good day, you know, because at the end of the day, I want to go where she goes, you know. And God's blessings, then a couple, 12 years we've owned Vista. Vista's a 6-apartment complex for the guys that leave Hayward. We call it advanced sobriety. It's not a 3-quarter house or anything. It's a place that guys that are sober and want to stay in the community can rent a place. Can rent it by the week or the month. They can share a room or get their own apartment, depending on what their finances are. And our deal is we don't want you to move out. We want you to move up. If you're doing this deal and you're giving back, we move up. We don't move out. It's impossible for a guy that's doing the program to move out. They always move up. It's inevitable. That's my experience. It's not my opinion, it's my experience. And then we just, Charlie McCombs, a good friend of mine, went to Denver, started an AC company. Michael and I bought his place. It's a 7-bedroom, 3-bath block home. And it's for advanced recovery. It's so God's been very good to me and my family as far as, I got more material positions than a guy like me should have or deserve. And my experience is there's no limit to God's giving. There's just no limit. And I'm grateful for that today, because I don't want to quit giving. And he could stop giving material possessions this minute, and I'd be okay with me. I'm still not going to stop giving. I'm afraid to stop giving, because I'm afraid that the minute I think doing it another guy's way isn't a good idea anymore, everything I've ever owned will fit in a shot glass. And I could give it away like that, because that's also my experience. I've watched it happen time and time again. Guys 20 years, 27 years, 35 years. What happened? Well, you know, I quit going to meetings. I quit getting plugged in. I quit doing the deal. And it's always amazing to me that we know it works, but yet it's the first time that we schedule out of our busy life, you know. Because when I got sober, it was go to a meeting every day. It really wasn't a 90 and 90. It was you drank every day, you go to a meeting every day. That was it. But yet it's the first thing I see people schedule out of their life when they get their job back and they get their families back and their life starts getting busy and they want to go camping and do fun stuff again. The first thing they quit doing is what works, what gave them their life back. I guess it's human nature. I don't know.
Final thought, closing thought?
My final thought is this. Bill Marcus at the Heliotrope meeting always said, build a fence of people around you so harm can't get in at you, and more importantly, you can't get out at harm. And I've built a fence of AA brothers. My experience is that I go to mainly stag meetings because I don't want to be distracted. I'm an easily distracted guy, and I don't want to be distracted by anything, because I figured out early on, watching a couple of buddies die, that this is a life or death errant, and we can't take it lightly. And I want to be right in the middle. And the thing that I didn't understand is the process of doing the step work to become a part of AA. I'll never forget Jake, going over to Jake's house to do a fifth step. In California, they had you write for 12 days, and on the 13th day, you did your fifth step. They had you write an hour a day, every day for 12 days. You had to call your sponsor right after you got done writing. If you missed a day, you had to start over. Now, that was the lineage I got sober, and that's the way they did it. And so on the 13th day was a Sunday. I went over to Jake's, and I walk in the door, and he says, all right, tell me one of the things you wouldn't write down. And I'm like, what? He's like, tell me one of the things you wouldn't write down. And I couldn't believe it. How do you know? How do you know that, Jake? And he's like, because everybody does it. I remember going, oh, whew. God, I think I'm always so unique. He's like, everybody does it, Dane. Because there was things that I had done in my life I couldn't put on paper. I was so ashamed of what I had done running amok that I couldn't write it down. And that's why I was convinced I was going to hell. Is because I would justify my behavior by saying, well, I'm not homeless yet, or I didn't do that yet, or I didn't do this yet. But the bottom kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And he opened me up like a can of tuna fish. So I shared with him something, and then he shared with me. And I'd share with him, and he'd share with me. It took us over 4 hours to do that fifth step. We burned it in his fireplace. He made me grab my big book, and he said, you're going to the beach. I'm going to drop you off for an hour. You're going to have your sixth step reflection on, did you do a fearless and thorough moral inventory of yourself, and did you omit anything? So he dropped me off on that beach, and he drove away, and I sat there and cried like a baby. For the first time in my life, I felt relief of that powerlessness, of feeling so powerless because I just couldn't stand AA when I got here. And it had saved my life. And it had made me look at it so much more different than I ever thought I could see it. And I never forget the freedom that I felt being able to unload the stuff that I'd been carrying around that was going to kill me. If I wouldn't have told Jake that day, there's no doubt in my mind those things would have killed me. They would have ended up taking my life. I was so ashamed because I wasn't raised that way, and I was so humiliated. And Jake looked at me and he hugged me and he said, you know, Dane, anything you give to God, he'll take. He'll give you another chance. Our only job is to never do them again. Not to say we won't do them again. Because telling somebody you're sorry and then living sorry are two different things. It's easy to say, oh, I'm sorry I did that. I shouldn't have lied to you. I'm sorry. Well, that's bullshit. Don't lie anymore. That's how you tell somebody you're sorry. You just don't do it anymore. And that was an eye-opening experience for me. And Jake took me on lots of retreats to Santa Barbara, and that gave me a whole different perspective on sobriety and brotherhood. We went on 4 retreats a year to Santa Barbara, and we went on a 5th one to do nothing but help the brothers to fix the
We put a roof on it one year, we revarnished the pews one year, we redid the doors one year, we painted one year. That's what we did. We'd go up there for 3 days every year and just work on the place and do whatever they needed. There'd always be about 40 of us. But we would have 4 retreats a year at San Lorenzo. And it was a monastery for guys who wanted to become a priest. They would start out in their street clothes, and then they would graduate to their brown robes. And sometimes they would get the gray one, but most of them were brown. And we go up there, you get to know them after you go there 4 times a year, but we did it religiously. And John Butler and I were able to start those retreats here in the Phoenix area up in Prescott. And been a big part of my sobriety, this brotherhood, this fence of people. There's people, I've never had this before, Estelle, but there's people I could call at any time, day or night, and say, hey man, I need something, and they'd be right there without question. See, I never knew what a friend was because I didn't know how to be a friend. I didn't know what a good person was because I didn't know how to be a good person. I didn't know respect was something that was earned, not given. I was taught all these things in these rooms through men just like you. And if we stay together and we go through life together, it makes it much more tolerable than being on the outside of the herd, being picked off one at a time. I choose to stay in the middle of the fence today and give back as much as God will allow me, and live every day to the fullest because it's a gift for a guy like me.